Hello and welcome to the easternFlicks podcast, a regular magazine programme about East Asian film led by me, Andrew Heskins, founder and grandmaster of easternFlicks.com, and James Mudge, our leading writer.
Hey-o.
Each episode we'll be taking a look at the latest films, news and festivals, often chatting to filmmakers and stars along the way. Hello again and welcome to our latest episode. This time we're focusing on Geran, a new Malaysian martial arts film which has just won the Action Award at the New York Asian Film Festival.
Very cool.
And we're chatting to the cast and crew behind it. We'll also find out that author and action coordinator Mike Fury got into easternFlicks. And we're going to hear from another about Udine Far East Film Festival campus correspondents.
Very nice.
But first, the important question. What are you drinking this episode, James?
I'm on a red wine this time, not quite as soft and fruity, but equally cheap. You know, I'm not. It's been in the fridge again. It's cool, so yeah, no complaints, man.
It's still summer, isn't it?
You may say so with the weather today. I'm not sure, man. Yourself?
And I'm back with the good old
Could be the Howling
locals, the Howling Hops. I'm on their one of their regulars, the House IPA India Pale Ale, 6.9%.
Oh man, that's it. That's a nice one.
So on to Geran, which focuses on the martial arts of Silat, an overall term for indigenous martial arts throughout the Indonesian archipelago, which includes Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, southern Thailand and southern Philippines. It was incredibly popular in film from Indonesia and Malaysia in the 1950s and 1960s, with, according to Wikipedia at least, more than 40 films about it produced by Shaw Brothers and Cafe Chris. But its on-screen popularity quickly waned in the successive decades. But in recent years, it's begun to revive in interest. Many of our listeners may be familiar with the Indonesian style that appeared in Maranatur.
That's right.
And it also appeared in his successive films, the Raid movies.
Yep.
Though the violence in The Raid 2 was considered so excessive, it was banned from a theatrical release in Malaysia.
Oh, no.
And there are other films in the region, but it's still quite rare to see on screen, making Geran's bagging this year's Daniel A. Craft Award for Excellence in Action Cinema even more special. Previous winners of the award include Dan Telang with Operation Red Sea, Yu Song's The Bodyguard, and also The Villainess.
Oh, yes, the overlong villainess, yes. Sorry, I got to throw it in there.
We were very fortunate to speak to the director of Geran, Areel Abu Bakar, the action choreographer, Azlan Komeng, and one of the lead stars, Megat Shahrizal, with Syeela Dzul acting as interpreter.
Bawa banyak bersabari. Allah nak duga kita. Nak uji kita. Nak tahu kat mana takat iman kita.
All right, Andrew, first of all, I would like to thank you for having us on this interview. And yeah, so we're all here ready for whatever you want to ask us. So shoot.
Great. Well, fabulous. It's great to have you. And thank you so much for sparing a bit of time.
Yeah.
Let's kick off with the big news. You know, how is it to be receiving the Daniel A. Craft Award for Excellence in Action Cinema from New York Asian Film Festival?
Okey, pertama sekali kita memang ucapkan terima kasih atas kesudian pihak NYAFF untuk memilih filem kita. Sebenarnya kita memang tidak pernah menyangka untuk apa-apa anugerah. Jadi bila kita dapat anugerah ni, kita rasa macam satu pengiktirafan yang sangat-sangat besar pada kita.
Right. So first and foremost, this is a huge honor to be nominated and actually to win the Daniel A. Craft Award. So right from the beginning, there was never, in their minds that they would ever receive any award of any form. So it has come as a huge surprise to actually receive such a huge acknowledgement, first of all, in terms of accomplishment that they never saw it coming and never thought of it that they would receive such an honor.
So to Areel, I believe you worked mainly as a cinematographer before. Why did you decide to make the move into directing your own films? And did your background as a cinematographer influence your approach and style as director?
Okay.
Saya berminat untuk shoot direct dalam filem sebab Malaysia tak ada filem yang mengangkat silat sebaik yang kita pernah tengok. So kita cuba apply dalam filem Geran tu untuk mengangkat silat dalam bentuk action, dan kita supaya silat tu diangkat di luar, sebab selalunya filem kita ada di dalam lingkungan yang terlalu terhad. So saya rasa saya sebagai cinematographer kena apply apa yang saya tahu dalam action movie, dan saya rasa peluang ni sangat bermakna untuk mengangkat silat tu dekat world lah.
Okay. So, Mr. Areel has mentioned that his experience as a cinematographer, he deals a lot with the martial art, Silat. And from there, he feels that it's very important, and he feels as a responsibility to bring that to the world, especially first nationwide, because it's the platform for such an art is limited here in Malaysia, especially to be showcased in films. So his ideal, his dream is to bring that on screen, which is why with his experience, dealing with action, stunt people, he wants to take a step further and create a movie that showcase all of that. And again, it's a limited platform here in Malaysia for us to showcase the art of Silat. And with his experience, he said, it's kind of like a waste to actually not showcase this. So that's what influenced him to direct, from cinematographer to directing. So he has a better platform, he has better opportunity to actually bring that forward, especially globally.
Also for Areel, what's kind of like the process of getting the film financed and made in Malaysia? Like, are there like film funds to apply for, or is it mainly like commercially funded?
Proses untuk cari funding ni dalam 3 years untuk cari funder, dan kebanyakannya kurang berminat sebab silat ni dianggap macam terlalu belum komersial. So sangat susah, dan kita decide dalam after 3 years kita decide untuk fund diri sendiri lah. So kita shoot dengan duit poket sendiri, dan saya mengajak kawan-kawan untuk bersama. Geran adalah satu perjuangan untuk mengangkat seni budaya dekat tempat sendiri, dan sebenarnya untuk orang luar tahu apa yang kita ada.
Okay, of course there were proposals to get grants and funds. However, there were not many parties who were interested to fund this particular film. So what they did was they funded themselves. So all of this is through, their own pocket money. Everything is, yes, everything is from their own dime and nickel. So collectively, actually, and this has been a dream since 3 years ago. And through that dream, they're very adamant to make it a reality. Therefore, it's, it's okay. Because Silat, the art of Silat, the martial art Silat is not commercially practiced yet there, especially here. It's not to say a lost art, however, because it's practiced among the rural areas. So to actually, have people show interest in it. So, but what's the use? What for? We're still getting doubts from people to put their faith, their confidence to fund such a film. So hence everything comes from, self-funding. Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I've read that the casting process for the film was done with martial arts competitions, and the majority of the cast are all martial arts practitioners. How did you go about actually choosing the cast? Were they the winners of those competitions, or was it based on skill or other factors?
To the choreographer, perhaps, can answer that best. Yes, Mr. Azlan, yes?
Okey, baik. Keutamaan kita memang kepada semua yang mempunyai asas dalam bela diri, terutamanya silat. Jadi dari segi pelakon memang semuanya ada asas silat. Okey, dari sudut stuntman juga kita mengambil pesilat-pesilat daripada gelanggang di tempat kita shoot lah di Kedah. Okey. Jadi senang cakap memang kita mengutamakan mereka yang punya asas. Macam saya sebut tadi, kita punya pelakon pun most daripada pelakon kita adalah pesilat yang mewakili negeri, ada yang mewakili negara. Okey, jadi kita semua ada latar belakang pesilat.
Right. Okay. So Mr. Azlan said that each actor, basically the people, the cast, they all have at least a basic form of knowledge in the Silat, and they all have at least practiced Silat for years and years on end. And most of them have tournament background. They've competed in competitions, and these cast, they were cast. The northern part, this is where Silat is mostly practiced. And to compare, we have, because most of them are shot in the rural areas, right? It's shot in the northern, specifically Kedah, specifically Kedah, where Silat itself is part of the lifestyle, in fact. So these are the people that are cast. And the most important thing is that they must have a background of the Silat and must practice Silat, because in terms of movements and in terms of acting, choreography, the choreography itself would be very difficult to explain to a non-martial artist. Yeah.
So, similar question. So there were no like stunt people involved in the film. It was all just real martial artists then.
Yes.
Dalam 90% artis dalam Geran semua pesilat, dan artis yang komersial pun pesilat. So yang belajar ataupun yang tapi diorang bukan professional stuntman lah. So kita ambil semua first time dalam action untuk introduce silat dalam filem. So diorang punya pendedahan ini diorang punya first time, untuk first time punya percubaan untuk angkat silat dalam first filem saya.
Right. Okay, first of all, 90% of the actors are all pesilat, which means that they're all practice Silat practitioners. They do practice Silat, the martial art. However, the majority of the actors in the cast this is the first time they were exposed to using Silat for commercial purpose, for filming. Therefore, the exposure that they have in terms of fighting scenes and whatnot, this is the first time that they actually perform outside the traditional ring, outside their normal practice. Hence, the choreographer, everything, it has to be practiced with bearing the movie in mind rather than as part of their lifestyle, because that's what they're used to actually. And it's great for the team and the cast, because at least they are all on the same page in terms like, okay, the choreographer said, okay, this is what I need done. They know the basic, the background is mutual. Right.
So to Megat, what was it like for you working with a cast of martial artists and Silat practitioners? Were there any real rivalries or real fights on set?
Yeah, Mr. Megat.
That's thank God no, there were no real fights happening on set, just the ones needed for the film. Like we've said before, myself, I have a background and basic in Silat, but I've been acting during when we shot Geran. I've already acted for around 14 years. But when from the day I started as an actor to the day I shot Geran, I've never used my knowledge in Silat. So when it came, the opportunity came about, and when I went to the set, I was happy to meet Areel and Azlan and use. Although my scene is short, but that's just an introduction, and I'm happy that finally we Malaysia itself has a Silat martial art movie. So I mean it's a joy because seeing them, and these are people that are passionate in what they want to do. So I think this translates on screen. And when I did my parts and everything, I was overjoyed. I mean, this is finally. I've been waiting for 14 years to apply this. So yeah.
So, Mr. Azlan, how did you approach the choreography in terms of setting up the fights? And do you have any key influences?
Okey, baik. Saya simpulkan, saya ringkas. Okey. Dalam silat kita ada beberapa bentuk konsep pertarungan. Jadi untuk pertama filem Geran, saya gunakan 80% konsep combat. Okey, combat ni bermakna tempur ringkas, pantas. Okey, sebab kita ada basic yang besar dalam silat adalah pertempuran combat dan seni. Okey, jadi seni ni permainan untuk orang yang lebih mahir. Okey, jadi combat ni adalah pergerakan yang biasanya kita akan guna dalam situasi-situasi yang normal. Jadi kita punya pendekatan tu, yang pertama kita perkenalkan konsep pertarungan secara combat dalam silat untuk filem Geran.
Right. So the approach to it, there are many fighting concepts in the Geran movie. However, 80% from the choreography side was towards the combat movement. So most fighting scenes that were involved, the concept that they used, the style in terms of movement, in terms of fighting, in terms of whether it's instinctive or intuitive, it's all combative. So you can see in certain scenes and movies because it's about defense, and the way that he approached the style is more towards combative, and in terms of the fighting scenes, the flow and the approach is like dancing, if you will, right? You can see that. That's one of the things that's very beautiful about Silat. Even though it's combative, even though it's offensive, even though it's defensive, it's very subtle yet powerful.
For Areel again as well, so you get the very, very strong sense of like the culture in the Silat, as we said, but I think there seems to be like a lot of other very cultural elements like music and musical instruments in there, so just interested to hear a bit more about that sort of side of the film too.
Geran sebuah filem berbentuk kekeluargaan sebenarnya. So kita dalam kita punya negara dah kurang kita explore pasal budaya. Mungkin ada, tapi dia terlalu kecil dan tak pergi ke skala yang besar. So kita apply dalam Geran, ada muzik, ada fighting, dan sebenarnya Geran tu dia cerita pasal kasih sayang, dan kita ada momen kekeluargaan tu yang penting, tapi orang kita nampak highlight ke arah action. So muzik semua ni sebenarnya satu accessories untuk membuatkan kita rasa apa yang kita tengok, dan elemen-elemen tu jarang dikeluarkan, ditayangkan atau divisualkan atau didengarkan dalam bentuk filem. Filem tu terlalu dekat, kalau kita punya Malaysia ni dia terlalu kecil skop yang berminat dalam filem-filem macam ni yang berunsur budaya tu terlalu kecil. Dia more ke komersial dan action yang tak melambangkan Malaysia tu sendiri.
Alright. Basically, For the movie, first and foremost, the concept, the value that the movie is trying to showcase is family and love. And throughout the whole movie, the plot that took place, other elements, of course, were introduced, and that is, of course, traditional music in which we can hear during the sparring, the practice, and what the movie is trying to do, what Areel is trying to do, is to showcase that as a whole, because it's holistic. It's very holistic. Silat and music and traditional music, because in Malaysia, in terms of real traditional values, is quite limited in terms of how we actually display it. The scope is very small and limited. And here, of course, if we were to squeeze everything in, it's going to be too much. It's going to be overwhelming. And the plot is going to be all over the place. So, yes, it is introduced to be an emotional drive for the movie, for the scenes, for the actions, especially because it is, of course, an action film. That is the element that is to become the emotional drive, because by the end of the day, the music represents family, represents love. So it's holistic in a whole way. Yeah.
So what has the reception to the film been in Malaysia?
Penerimaan dekat Malaysia, selepas 10 hari tayang baru orang aware pasal filem Geran tu ada dekat sinema, sebab kita kos untuk promotion tu kita agak terhad, dan kita orang buat tour, dan dia jadi satu fenomena sekejap dalam sebulan tu, dan sampai sekarang ada lagi dia orang punya tu, dia tak habis lagi, dan sampai di sekolah, satu sekolah boleh tukar martial art lain ke silat satu Malaysia. Yang tu pencapaian, saya rasa yang tu satu pencapaian ataupun satu sumbangan filmmaker kepada Malaysia untuk mengingatkan kita jati diri Malaysia itu sendiri.
Dan juga benda yang antara yang nampak macam kelakar tapi sangat menarik, orang-orang lama ataupun kita panggil senior kita yang dah lama tak tengok wayang 20 tahun 15 tahun, dia orang kembali menonton hanya kerana filem Geran. Itu antara dan berbusana menonton. Jadi benda tu dia satu vibe yang sangat baik.
Okay. Alright. So first of all, within the first few days, reception, of course, was not as promising. But after 10 days and above, it has reached almost the whole nation, and it has become amazing. The people know more about the movie because of the background, because Silat was introduced into it, and people were excited to see that it's showcasing Silat in real life issues and the values that they promote, and it has been phenomenal ever since. And they've been doing tours from that day forth, like around Malaysia. And what's more impactful is the fact that on a tour they did it to one of the schools, the school martial art that was compulsory and mandated to the students to learn was another form of martial art. The school's owner changed the martial art teaching towards Silat based on the phenomenal values that he received, knowing that Silat is back. Okay, and for viewers, audiences, especially the senior ones, what you call that, the fathers and the grandparents, where Silat was such a huge thing back in the days, they have started coming out and visit cinemas again, because knowing that Silat is being reintroduced in such a way that it relates to them very hugely, and coming in full Silat costume, because they are Silat practitioners. They were proud of it, and it's in a way it's one of the biggest accomplishments here in Malaysia that we are able to reintroduce Silat, and that people are appreciating it in a whole new light and seeing it for the first time again with fresh eyes, especially for the younger generation, that they're actually loving it and loving the values and the history. And the most important thing is about the history, because Silat comes with its own beauty story and history and knowledge, and if we were to talk about it, it'd be a whole different history class actually. Yeah. So yeah, it's phenomenal actually here.
Adik hang kena pergi settle hutang dengan adik tau.
In general, I think some international audiences or maybe martial arts fans might not be as familiar with Malaysian films and with Silat. I know there's been some other ones which have played at New York, like Fly By Night, Walk With Me, and there's some on like Netflix now, like Vera, which is on Netflix. So I was just wondering, like, do you think like the reputation for Malaysian cinema is now starting to grow internationally, and is there any other sort of films or filmmakers you think, as well as you guys, who are reaching wider international audiences?
Silakan.
It's good that films like you mentioned before, Want to Jaga, Fly By Night, it's reaching international audience, and of course with the platform of Netflix we can put much more local films and international audience can watch our films. And this for me, with all these kind of platforms, we need more films like Geran. We need especially recently our own film body, FINAS, film governing body, FINAS, they've recently announced that they would like our films to reach Oscars. So road to Oscars. So I mean, if they want that, they should give more opportunities to our filmmakers to reach out to all these festivals before we reach the Oscars. We should support our local filmmakers. I mean, small filmmakers like Areel, and there are others. I mean, not just films about Silat. There are any genre of film that, and we have so many storytellers. We have so many stories to tell. What you see is just probably the surface of, and even Geran is just the surface of what Silat is. I mean, we have stories in Sabah, in Sarawak, other states. So these are the stories that I think our FINAS should give opportunities, and I hope that if it's good, we can reach the Oscars one day. So yeah, who knows? Yeah,
Definitely a wish list there. Yes, it is our wish list.
So to everyone, what new projects are you working on now? What's going
for next film, kita akan ada Walid. Walid pun action movie, dan dia kekeluargaan juga, dan kita ada isu-isu semasa. So kita tunggulah macam mana dia punya story. And so action juga, action movie.
Okay, so yes, working on a next film, and it's in the pre-production stage at the moment, script writing and casting, and it's centering on family issues as well, and catering to the current issues that we're facing right now in Malaysia as well. So we're highlighting that, and it's also an action film as well. Yes. And the title would be Walid, WALID, Walid. Yeah. So the story, there'll be a teaser in the coming future. So it's still in the pre-production stage. We're working out the kinks. Yeah.
Walid means father. by the way.
It actually, Amy's
okay.
father. Yes, thank you. Yes.
Cool, great.
How about the other guys? What else are you working on?
Yang lain apa projek yang lain? Yang
Saya
sekarang.
okey, sekarang saya sedang syuting drama. Okey, lama saya sama juga sedang menyusun bahagian-bahagian aksi untuk filem Walid.
Okay. For Mr. Azlan Komeng, our choreographer, yeah, he's working on other dramas, especially on arranging and choreographing fight scenes. But of course, also working with the next production with Areel on Walid, especially in for the choreographers for that as well. Yep.
Yeah, well, me personally, Walid is. We hope to shoot that film end of the year. Between that, I'm personally, I'm also a director, so I do some TV series and I act sometimes, occasionally, and my goal is. Our director here told me to lose some weight for Walid. So and our choreographer here told me, Megat, you need to get fit for make sure you get fit. So yeah, that's I have a few months to work on that.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, so just in general, for any of our listeners here who are not so familiar with Malaysian films, do you have any recommendations or suggestions where good places to start, apart from Geran, of course?
I mean, sadly, because of the pandemic, I mean, there's lots of films that's supposed to come out got postponed. But I mean, I think there's another film that Namron is involved with as well. Ro it's also one of the films showcased in New York Asian Film Festival. I think for me, because the limited number of films that we have, Ro is the one to look for this year. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
So I think we're pretty much at the end of our questions, but I think what we'd love to know are who are your martial art heroes, or what are your favourite martial art films?
I think setiap seorang boleh bagi. So kita start dengan apa ni, hero.
Okey. Untuk saya dari segi aksi ataupun stunt, dah tentulah zaman kita membesar dengan filem-filem Jackie Chan. Alright, dan sebagai semangat untuk pelawan, saya suka pada pendekatan yang dibawa oleh Muhammad Ali, dan kita banyaklah lagi kita punya research tentang pejuang-pejuang daripada hampir seluruh dunia. Itu saya rasa.
Right, for our choreographer, Mr. Azlan, his child hero, because growing up watch a lot of Jackie Chan movies, so definitely Jackie Chan, and look at him do stunts. So yeah, that's why he's a stuntman now. And in terms of, because growing up as kids, all of us were exposed to that because commercially that's what's famous and that's what's in at that moment. And as he grew up, in terms of approach, in terms of style, his idol would be Muhammad Ali. Yeah, Muhammad Ali, because he's in awe with the way his style, the beauty, the subtlety, the gentleness within his fight. So that what drove him to what he's passionate about today. Yeah, and of course there are many other idols that you have around the world, because they showcase different styles as well. Yeah, or the fighting, especially the fighting style. All right, so Mr. Areel, your idol.
Idol is Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali Muhammad Ali dia ada satu semangat dalaman yang kuat, dan dia ada satu vision yang dia boleh jadi world champ. So dalam filmmaking, action actor, personally saya suka Donnie Yen. So dia punya seni arts dia dalam martial art sangat tinggi lah. So saya rasa Donnie Yen action actor yang membawa satu semangat dalam kecinaan dia dalam world punya dia nak introduce Chinese tu dalam bentuk martial art.
All right, for Mr. Areel Abu Bakar, his idol is of course Muhammad Ali as well, and for him, the reason being is that Muhammad Ali possessed this inner spirit that's very high for Mr. Areel, and he finds that very fascinating in the fact how he fought for championship through this, because he's passionate, is shown his spirit is high, and that we for Muhammad Ali, and of course in terms of fightings, right? It's Donnie Yen. Right, of course, Donnie Yen, for him, he possessed this high knowledge of martial art, and how Donnie Yen really brings out the Chinese culture, its heritage, showcasing it to the highest degree, and he really respects that.
Both of them. I mean, growing up in the 80s, you just cannot help it. But that is the exposure that we have. That's what as a kid, that's what you watch in the cinemas, in TV. It's Jackie Chan. It's Jackie Chan, and these me myself, I grew up in the city. Unlike my friends here, they Silat was actually quite common in their areas, but for me it's quite hard. So, but watching these films, I wanted to learn martial art. So, when I was a teenager, found a Silat class. So, because of Jackie Chan's film, and then at that moment, the effect was some of the Hong Kong filmmakers came here actually to do some TV series called Pendeka or Warrior. So they did a lot of TV series in the 90s, and this kind of created a phenomenon in the 90s for our TV, and we have a few actors that have background in Silat, but after that generation, somehow after Jackie Chan became Hollywood, we have some lacking in terms of people who learns martial arts, and I think because of his generation that created our generation, and I personally hope that our generation can create another generation that can contribute into the martial arts world, not just Silat, any form of martial arts into the film industry. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you. Congratulations again.
Yes.
You're welcome.
It's an honor. We are actually, everyone here on the cast and the production team, they're very honored, and they felt it's such a highest form of privilege and acknowledgement to accomplish such an acknowledgement, especially from the New York International Asian Festival. Yeah. So thank you from the bottom of their hearts for this high honor. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sparing us some time. That's
Yeah,
been great.
thank you. Yeah, very
Thank you
nice
very
chat.
much.
Our pleasure. It was our pleasure.
Hukum dunia dia boleh lepas batin, tapi hukum akhirat, hukum Allah, dia takkan lepas batin.
A very interesting chat, seem very nice guys, and I think for me one of the things which comes across both from the chat and from watching the film is the kind of Silat and the culture which you're actually putting in there. So I mean, we've talked about the martial arts styles with them and the choreography, but I think from those guys it's really clear that the culture really means a lot to them, and I think that comes a lot on screen as well, compared to, we were chatting before, when we were watching some other martial arts films, we just take it as martial arts. We don't really think, this is a style or something. But I think from Geran there, you can see, they have a clear objective of, putting this culture, this martial arts form and its kind of technical side, the culture side on screen, which I thought was very, very cool about the film as well,
I think the other thing is that, there's actually quite impressive is that basically they funded it themselves.
Yeah, I didn't know that, man. I knew it was, it looks like, not a very high budget film, but to
actually just go about it. So, and actually, from that kind of perspective, I think that the stunts, the actual, the way it's set up is actually quite impressive. And
Yeah,
I think in some ways
yeah.
you're probably a little bit more generous to the film, knowing this isn't a multi-million budget film where they can just chuck all sorts of cameras and
Definitely.
setups.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
do a really, really great job with.
Absolutely.
Very little.
Yeah, and when the level of kind of like passion and enthusiasm which kind of goes into it, and like they were saying about the casting process and the people like being martial artists rather than say like traditional actors and stuff, because it's still, as the choreographer as I was saying, like there's that difference I guess between performing Silat as what they were saying, like part of their everyday life and stuff, to actually performing it and trying to mix it with like entertaining fight scenes.
Yeah,
that must be quite a weird job, really, for a martial artist. If it's something you do, and you kind of it's your like philosophy of life, it informs everything you do. To suddenly sort of doing that and switching it into like like 4-minute fight scenes, 5-minute fight scenes, and everything. Especially when some people are playing good guys, some people are playing bad guys. Yeah, and everything as well. That must have been, a stretch, not a stretch, but an interesting shift. Yeah, I guess to use something like if I would see myself as a really jolly drinker, but if I had to suddenly in a film like portray like a terrible drinker, everything, it would be bizarre to me, So, but when watching that film, it does everything else. It does feel natural, kind of. It feels a lot more technical than other martial arts films do. I mean, not in like I guess before I watched it and everything, I thought about like Ong Bak and stuff like that, which are quite well known for being, well, you'd say like more grounded or sort of supposed to be like no wires, everything kind of stuff. So I thought it was going to be slightly more that way, whereas this really is a lot more grounded in the actual martial art itself.
And the culture
I think.
of it.
Absolutely, yeah,
very much so. Yeah.
Which I think that was my main key sort of strength for the film and everything like that. It feels completely, immersed in the sort of culture behind it. So I mean, we mentioned like the musical instruments and stuff. Like the whole film really does feel like it's he was talking about the values, like the family values and everything, which are all parts of this martial art, that's very cool as well. You're hearing about that. Very different to the Raid from Maranta. which is great as well. I mean, I think it's not something we usually think about when we think about martial arts films. I guess we think about the action scenes. Who's getting punched in the face, or who's suddenly going to get their throat ripped out or their bones broken and stuff. Whereas it's not that kind of martial arts film at all. No. I mean, I guess it's very specifically about a certain martial art. I think, there's almost a bit more of the sort of 36 Chamber of Shaolin about it, in terms of kind of philosophy behind the martial art. But it's that rather than the actual fight scenes and everything like that. Because I mean the plot itself is it's fairly straightforward plot and everything like that. But it doesn't really matter to that extent because the film is so rooted in the sort of cultural side of the martial arts and everything like that. And I think it's something that would be interesting to see kind of more of for different martial arts styles maybe and everything as well, because I've been watching martial arts films for my life. I'm not massively well trained or anything like that. But you know what I mean though. I don't feel so, despite that, like I don't really know much actually about martial arts. A lot of things I know are probably just nonsense for films. Like it would be like 1,000 kick window punch or something like that. I don't know. It doesn't even make sense. But you know what I mean. Whereas this feels completely different to those other kinds of films and everything. And knowing that all the people involved, they at least had to have some grounding in Silat and ways to actually handle themselves and everything like that. It's a completely different feel to the film. Yeah.
So it is interesting to see how these films are turning up on Malaysian films are turning up on Netflix. It's
definitely, yeah. I mean, as we said in the interview, I mean, I have to, be honest. I don't know much about Malaysian cinema. I don't think it gets too much profile and stuff. But then, before we had this interview, I looked at some of the ones which are on Netflix. Checked out some of the trailers, and there's some pretty cool looking stuff on there and everything like that. And I mean, that's another. We're not praising Netflix overly again, but it's good that those things are actually on there and there's this platform to get these films out, because they're never really getting a cinema release. Like playing at a festival is great, but knowing that there's platforms to actually see these films and talking to these guys today, it makes me a lot more interested to go and check out some of these key films and stuff like that. So there's no downside to that, and hopefully I've no idea if they're making money from putting it to Netflix and stuff, but just reaching like more international exposure and stuff like that. It's long may that continue.
Now, Geran is just part of this year's New York Asian Film Festival, which is in its 19th edition, which is a pretty impressive feat in itself, isn't it? Unsurprisingly, as for many other festivals, in this unusual year, they've had to move online. But it will be running, streaming across the US via the Smart Cinema app from August 28th to September 12th, 2020. No, this isn't an American festival. I do it the dates in the American way.
Yes. Very cool.
Hi, I'm Mike Fury. I'm a writer and author, and specifically I've written a couple of books titled Life of Action 1 and 2, which speaks to many successful men and women in the martial arts and action movie business. The latest book has interviews with names such as Zoe Bell, Tony Jaa, Michael Jai White, Frank Grillo, Kelly Hu, and many others, so it was a lot of fun having those conversations and putting that book together. Most importantly, in this case, I'm a lifelong martial arts and Eastern film fan, and this is how I got into easternFlicks. It's a bit of a cliche when everyone says it started with Bruce Lee, but if you're of a certain age, I think it's undeniable. Being a big film buff already, I was lucky enough to experience part of the VHS craze which carried through to the late 90s, and I do at times feel a bit sorry for film fans today who didn't get to experience that, because while DVD had it to a certain extent, with streaming nowadays, it's not something I think can be replicated and really understood. The craze and obsession with tracking down coveted, hard-to-find films in video format was incredibly fun and rewarding. I watched all the Bruce Lee films from my local video shop, one by one, and they were heavily cut and had those great dubbed voice tracks we all know and love and remember. And I think the fact that those are restored now on the Blu-ray re-releases we're seeing goes to show how much the fans really enjoyed them. Then it becomes about tracking down versions of the film you haven't seen, like the nunchuck sequence in Enter the Dragon, or the full fight from Game of Death. So now with the internet, everything's available on YouTube, which is great in many ways, but I feel like we're kind of spoiled. But it was fun and part of the whole experience to find films back in the day, and be rewarded for that perseverance. A film which really sparked my imagination as a kid and got me into easternFlicks was No Retreat, No Surrender, which a school friend had on video. As bored kids with short attention spans, we fast-forwarded all the dialogue scenes, which of course shows a lot of weird, quirky comedy, which is a guilty pleasure now, but we weren't looking for that back then. We wanted to see Van Damme looking mean, like he did on the video cover, and that's what we got. So it's not the strongest film from a cinematic standpoint, but it's a gateway, right? And it's directed by Corey Yun, which is cool and interesting and surreal to think about now. Then, through the path of discovery, I watched Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, Yun Bu, Lau Ka-lung, Jet Li, John Woo, Chow Yun-fat, Golden Harvest films, Shaw Brothers films, and everything else imaginable. I'm also a big fan of Japanese Yakuza films, Beat Takeshi being one of my favourites. And over time I got into the work being produced in Korea, Thailand, Indonesia, and elsewhere. I think there's such a rich tapestry of heritage and history in martial arts and action cinema from all over the world, and the fun is going on those kind of deep dives to discover new things. I also know for sure that what I know and like is a tiny slither of what's actually out there. So if you're a real passionate fan, I think you've got to go and try new things, like tasting dishes in a restaurant. Don't just go for the same old thing at the buffet, as much as you might like it. If there's one criticism I have of Eastern movie fans in general, I see what I believe to be a kind of resistance to the new at times. Being stuck in a bubble of Jackie Chan films from the 80s. Look, I'm a big Jackie Chan fan too. I love Police Story, Wheels and Meals, Dragons Forever and everything else. But I think it's important to keep exploring, learning and be open to new possibilities. It's a global world we live in now, and through the most sketchy internet connection, everyone has access to the same film footage, music, art and information. It's the good side of the internet, which I mentioned earlier. So a lot of young indie filmmakers from all over the world, places we may not have even heard of, are filming cool and interesting fight scenes, and they were also in part inspired by Jackie Chan with their own local spin. I believe films are a true cultural gateway, so that's the big takeaway for me. And it's fun to see this evolution, and I hope the flame continues burning bright from Eastern films.
Hi, I'm Josep Santcristofol from Spain, and I'm part of Faris Film Festival campus, and today I'm going to talk about Labyrinth of Cinema. This movie came as a big surprise, as no one really thought that Nobuhiko Obayashi would make another movie after Hanagatami. He was diagnosed with lung cancer during the pre-production of that movie and was given only a few months to live, so this is nothing short of a miracle because it was 4 years ago. While Hanagatami kinda felt like a passion project, a magnum opus in a way, Labyrinth of Cinema feels more like a farewell to both cinema and to his fans. The premise of the movie is a bit ridiculous, but you can expect that from Nobuhiko Obayashi. In an unspecified time, a movie theater gets turned into a time machine. A group of 3 students will slip into the war film they are watching, reliving some of the most defining moments of Japanese history. Above all, though, this movie is a love letter to cinema, to the communal experience of watching a movie in a theater. We have all identified with the characters so much that it was like we were living through their eyes. Obayashi turns this feeling into a literal experience, as the 3 protagonists get turned into characters of the movie inside the movie. There is also a constant reflection over the nature of cinema. Is movie purely a fiction, or is it also reality? The director does not shy away from trying to give an answer. Movies are as much part of reality as the feelings we experience. The rhythm of the movie is absolutely frenetic, with constant jumping from one era to another, which makes it almost impossible not to get lost at some point. Though that's not a bad thing, as the universe of the movie is so rich and captivating that it's just a pleasure to let go and enjoy the wild ride. The length of the movie might be a drawback for some, because it's 3 hours long, but it shouldn't be, as it keeps reinventing itself and the amount of interesting ideas that it poses is absolutely stunning, feeling like a sum of all directors' thoughts about cinema as an art. Labyrinth of Cinema is such an optimistic goodbye from one of the greats, which is the most striking thing about such a marvelous film. The director sadly left us 2 months ago, but he did so with a message that cinema can make us change for the better, and, in quoting his own movie, he will survive as long as we all can remember him.
That's it for this episode. In coming episodes, we'll be doing a whistle-stop tour from the history of the famous Shaw Brothers studio, and we'll be chatting about manga artist Junji Ito and some of his works that he turned to film, as well as all our usual features, reviews and interviews. So don't forget to follow this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google or whatever platform you use, so you never miss a show. And let us know what you think on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest and LinkedIn. But for now, cheers!
Here's to it.